Okay, the reading for this week is the next part in our series on pre-modern, medieval, early modern Japanese civilization, culture, religion, and so forth. And today we'll be reading excerpts from selected writings by Saichō. And the excerpts are taken from 4 essays: Prayer on Mount Hiei, On the Possibility of Enlightenment for All Men, Vow of the Uninterrupted Study of the Lotus Sutra, the Mahayana Precepts in Admonitions of the Fangwang Sutra. Okay, and once again, these excerpts are taken from the English translations that are included in Sources of Japanese Tradition, compiled by William Theodore de Barry, Donald Keene, and George Tanabe, and Paul Varley, 2nd edition, Volume 1, Columbia University Press, 2001. I'll provide a link to that source in the description below. You can purchase it and follow along with that. I'll also give the link to this PDF worksheet that was compiled by somebody at Columbia University that we're using in this class. All right. Introduction to the monk and Buddhist philosopher Saichō. Okay. Saichō was born in 767. So just to review, if you haven't memorized the dates of all the major Japanese periods, do so immediately. Just to review very briefly, the Nara period lasted from 710 to 814, and it was followed by the Heian period, which lasted from 794 to 1185. There seems to be some overlap there. We'll have to look into that. These dates might be right. Let me look into that. All right. So he lived toward the end of the Nara period, and in the early part of the Heian period is when Saichō lived. He died in 822, posthumously titled Dengyo Daishi. So remember, when these important Buddhist monks die, after they die, they are given a posthumous name, and his was Dengyo Daishi. And he is the founder of the Tendai school in Japan. Remember, Tendai originally comes from China, but Saichō brought it to Japan, and Tiendai is the Chinese reading of that word, I think, or Tientai maybe, and the Japanese pronunciation of those two characters is Tendai, and he's the founder of Tendai School in Japan, which became the most prominent branch of Buddhism throughout the Heian period. Okay, so remember, Tendai was not the first Buddhism that came to Japan. We have the Kegon Buddhism, which is the Huayang in Chinese, I think is the reading for that, Huayang. Huayang was prominent in the Nara period, but then the Heian period, Tendai school of Buddhism dominated, and then with the Kamakura period, we see Tendai sort of branch into several other schools of Buddhism, but Heian period was dominated by Tendai. Saichō learned of the Chinese Tiantai, here's the Chinese reading, the Tiantai teachings during his trip to China in 804. Okay, so in his middle age, he went to China, and after returning to Japan, he founded the Enryakuji Temple on Mount Hiei near Kyoto. I'll put a link to some more information about Mount Hiei, Hiezang, near Kyoto. And we'll discuss that temple and its significance in history and so forth in class. At that point, the main Buddhist rituals were shifted from being performed at Todaiji in Nara, which followed the Hinayana precepts, okay, the Vinaya or Hinayana, the Shōjo. Remember, Buddhism is divided into Shōjo and Daijo. Daijo is the Mahayana, the great vehicle Buddhism, which is dominant in Japan. The Hinayana was sort of an earlier phase of Buddhism that dominates in India and parts of Southeast Asia and so forth. So at that point, the main Buddhist rituals were shifted from being performed at Todaiji in Nara, which followed the Hinayana or Shōjo precepts, to Enryakuji, which Saichō founded, which adhered strictly to the Bodhisattva, the Mahayana precepts. Saichō also wrote important doctrinal commentaries on the Lotus Sutra. Okay, so Saichō's rise and his importation of Tendai marked pretty much the end of the Hinayana elements. All right. So here are the excerpts from selected writings by Saichō. Before I read the excerpts, I'm going to read the 4 questions on your study guide here. What does the symbolism of the lotus flower in the water mean? Okay, this is a very important symbol or image in Buddhism. What does the lotus flower in water mean? You see this a lot in the sutras, in the writings by Buddhist monks. What is its symbolic significance? Is that question. Number 2, what does Saichō imply by the notion of quote-unquote universal enlightenment? Okay, what does he mean by this idea? How is it different from the enlightenment of other Buddhist thinkers and Buddhist schools? Number 3, what is Saichō's view of correct speech in Buddhism? Okay, remember in the 8. All right, I won't get into that. Never mind. Number 4, what does Saichō mean by filial obedience? Okay, and how is this idea, this Buddhist idea of filial obedience, different from the xiao or filial obedience that is one of the cardinal virtues in Confucianism? We might add to that question and discuss that in class. All right, here are the excerpts. First is from Prayer on Mount Hiei. O Buddhas of unexcelled complete enlightenment, bestow your invisible aid upon this hut I open on the mountain top. Okay, that's from the Dengyo Daishi Zenshu, volume 4. The next excerpt is from On the Possibility of Enlightenment for All Men. That first one is more of a poem or an incantation of sorts. This next is from an essay called On the Possibility of Enlightenment for All Men. And here's the lotus flower image that the question asked about. So underline this and we'll discuss it in class. In the lotus flower is implicit its emergence from the water. If it does not emerge, its blossoms will not open. In the emergence is implicit the blossoming. So the lotus flower here and the water and the blossoming are all obviously symbols for something. What are they symbols for? If the water is 3 feet deep, the stalk of the flower will be 4 or 5 feet. If the water is 7 or 8 feet deep, the stalk will be over 10 feet tall. So the depth of the water and the height of the lotus flower, too, are obviously symbols for something as well. We'll discuss these in class. That is what is implied by the emergence from the water. The greater the amount of water, the taller the stalk will grow. The potential growth is limitless. So what does it mean that its growth is limitless? Now all human beings have the lotus of Buddhahood within them. It will rise above the mire, the doro, right, which is another important symbol in Buddhism. It will rise above the mire and foul water of the Hinayana and quasi-Mahayana, and then through the stage of the Bodhisattvas to open leaves and blossoms together in full glory. Okay, so this is explicitly criticizing or critiquing the Hinayana and the quasi-Mahayana schools of Buddhism, putting forth new ideas of Buddhism which he regards as superior. And this is taken from the Dengyo Daishi Zenshu, volume 4. Next excerpt is from an essay called Vow of the Uninterrupted Study of the Lotus Sutra. I vow that, as long as heaven endures and earth lasts, to the most distant term of the future, this study will continue without the intermission of a single day, at the rate of 1 volume every 2 days. Thus the doctrine of universal enlightenment will be preserved forever and spread throughout Japan to the farthest confines. May all attain Buddhahood. Okay, so not just the elites, not just the wise sages, the arhats or lakang in Japanese, as we say, they're not the only ones who are capable of attaining enlightenment, but rather all are capable of attaining enlightenment according to the Mahayana tradition, and he's emphasizing that point here. May all attain Buddhahood. May all become Buddhas. And the final excerpt is taken from the Mahayana, or Daijo, the Mahayana precepts in admonitions of the Fangwang Sutra. At that time, the Buddha Shakyamuni, seated under the bo tree, after having attained supreme enlightenment, first set up the precepts, the pratimoksa. To be filial to one's parents, teachers, members of the Buddhist community, and the three treasures. Filial obedience is the way by which one attains the way. So underline the way here, underline filial obedience here, xiao, oyakoko in Japanese, and the way is the michi or Tao in Chinese. How is this Tao different from the Tao of Taoism and the Tao of Confucianism? We'll discuss that. And the same question with regard to filial obedience. And then the next part of that essay, in the case of a son of the Buddha lying, urging others to lie, or lying for expediency, so underline lying for expediency, which is hoben in Japanese, or upaya in Sanskrit, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. So this is about the idea of expedient means, lying for expediency, upaya, hoben. Whatever the cause, condition, method, or the act of lying, even if one says one sees something without actually seeing it, or says one did not see something when one has seen it, a bodhisattva should always give rise to correct speech, and help all sentient beings to give rise to correct speech and correct views. If, on the contrary, one prompts sentient beings to evil speech or evil views, one commits a most unpardonable offense for a bodhisattva. All right, in this bit about correct speech, I think he's referring here to, or it's in the context of the Eightfold Path. So you remember the Four Noble Truths, which are central to Buddhism. The last of the Four Noble Truths refers you then to the Eightfold Path, which is sort of the concrete instructions for achieving enlightenment, for purifying the mind and so forth. And in those Eightfold Path instructions, we have specific instructions about correct speech, correct actions, correct sight, correct viewing, correct hearing, and so forth. And I think that's this excerpt is in reference to that. All right, we'll discuss more about all of this in class. I will see you then. Goodbye.